Thank you. I'm so delighted to be here today. And I'm also very thankful to the Ludwig Museum team and Leila and everyone, Frizzy, who have been so kind in organizing such inspiring 2 days. So what am I going to talk about today is a little bit of my story. And my story is filtered through the lenses of my fellowship at two institutions that are very different. And this is not a matter of comparison here, it's just a storytelling. And the topic of this storytelling is how acquisition processes are at both institutions, what they entail, how they are framed, who are the players, what are the core questions, what are the aims, and also, ultimately, what are the challenges. And what I would like to argue today is that acquisition process in museum collection is a very delicate phase. And with the word delicate, I mean that it requires a lot of skills, and most precisely a synchronicity of hard and soft skills. It requires thoughtfulness, a lot of dedication, a lot of time, a lot of collaboration. And in institutions where collaboration perhaps is not in place yet, it requires establishing collaboration, understanding the players and responsibilities, and ultimately, most importantly, translational skills, which means that I can translate in fruitful terms what I see to people that perhaps are less familiar with the media conservation field. So today I'm gonna guide you behind the scene of acquisition process and MoMA at the Brooklyn Museum. So MoMA, okay. Well, MoMA has been an institution leader in collecting media art since 1975, although there are other works that you mentioned that were part of the film department acquisition, so some are also even earlier. And the media conservation field has been established in 2000, the media conservation team is established in 2005 when the first media conservator was hired. And since then, a lot of evolution has happened in the field. The team has increased to 3 people on staff and then fellows. And I was one of the 3 fellows, part of the Media Conservation Initiative. There are some links at the end that you can also jump and look because there are lots of interesting resources of what we've been doing. So, that said, it means that the acquisition process has been well established in the past years, and it is an important and fundamental part of acquiring media works, and a fundamental part of the life cycle of an artwork. Obviously, I do not want to undermine the importance of displaying the work, installing the work, and how different iterations of the work also contribute to the life of these works and the multiple lives. My presentation today will narrow down only to acquisition because it's also quite long. I hope I can make it on time. A MoMA acquisition, and Joanna yesterday talked about creating trust with the artist, and is exactly one of the main aim of also acquiring works is starting to build trust with the artist, and also starting to understand how, as a museum and as custodians, we can fulfill the moral responsibility to care for these works as they continue to unfold in the future in a landscape of technological development. So the core question of acquisition are, as you can see here, what is the work? What is the museum acquiring? What elements is the museum responsible from procuring? And what cost we can anticipate? And cost here is also quite important, because if we are acquiring works, historical works that, for example, are delivered on tape, we need to create a a framework for acquisition costs that also entail conservation costs. So it's really important that we generally sit at the table. It's a very cross-departmental meeting where we have curatorial, registrar, conservation, as well as AV technician, and we discuss what it means to acquire this work today and how we can plan for its display. The acquisition is a long process. As I said earlier, it requires time and dedication. And it takes 1 year for MoMA to complete one acquisition. The first stage is the acquisition meeting, where at the board of trustees decide together with the curatorial team which works are entering the collection. Then we have the pre-acquisition phase and the receipt of artist deliverable, a condition assessment phase, and a final payment and paperwork. In between those 12 months, those 3 phases of pre-acquisition, artist deliverable, and condition assessment are under the responsibility of the conservation team that collaborates with other departments to ensure that what we are receiving is what we are supposed to receive. Pre-acquisition phase, and this is really important. I want just to underline that MoMA is a very artist-centric institution. That means that we start a dialogue with the artist that can take many different forms, and it can happen it happened first at a point of acquisition, but also it continues to unfold when every time the work is being displayed. We invite artists to see the exhibition to understand what they think, if the exhibition was successful and they retain successful, and so on. So pre-acquisition phase, artist questionnaire. We have a set of general questions and a little bit detailed question that we ask the artist. This takes the form of a email exchange. We just want to understand what the museum is going to acquire, what edition number is the museum acquiring, and then provide a general description of the work. And then depending on whether the work is a video, multi-channel installation, a film, a software-based work, or augmented reality apps, we draft specific questions that are so-called more detailed. And this is an example here of a video pre-acquisition questionnaire, and we ask a question that relate first to the carrier, so what we are getting, how the work was made, which master file we're going to receive, which exhibition file, or whether we're going to receive also, for example, tapes or laser disc or any other type of carrier. And then we also ask questions about the display, if there are preferences, how the artist would like to see the work displayed, if there are minimum or maximum projection size in the case of a projection, or if there are specific monitors, because this is important for understanding whether the museum is supposed to procure specific hardware and stockpile them so that we can think about the future iteration of the work. And this is an example here of artist deliverable. This is a work as a single channel work by Halli Lantindere. It's called Homeland. It was made in 2016 and the museum acquired it in 2017. What we receive is what you see on the image on the left side is a hard drive. And then the condition assessment phase starts, which means we first catalog digital components. I was having lunch today. We were just talking about how, for traditionally trained registrar, understanding that every digital component also requires a cataloging number, a tracking number is very important. I'm not gonna get into that. I just wanted to open a bracket, as I say. And then transfer data from the artist provided drive to our computer, and then bag it. Bag it is a standard that is used in the Library of Congress, and it allows to basically safely, without overwriting on the file, to transfer data on our computer. And then we do a condition assessment, which means really like when a conservator of, for example, painting is looking at the painting under the microscope or looking at it with different tools or conducting analysis, for example, for plastic material in the case of contemporary art conservation, we do the same. We analyze the video file under different microscopes that are vector scope, waveforms analysis. And so this is an example of a cataloging, the cataloging of the material, and you see how different components are being created. But I wanted to show you how a video is actually being analyzed with, for example, media encoder. And those are two screenshots here of media encoder and the waveform of audio. So you see on the x-axis is time, and then amplitude on the left, on the y-axis. And then you can also run an amplitude scanning to see whether the audio is clipped or not, and then go back to the artist and ask whether all these what we might suppose as being anomalies might be intentional and wanted, and the video should be just as is. And this is just a single channel video installation. And it requires a lot of time also to create all these components and really, really look at the work. And then we document the work. We have different type of reports. The first one in the condition assessment phase, we do a video condition report where we collect all metadata information, all our observation. If we see anomalies, we also take a screenshot and then we record the time code. We record it also if there has been a little email exchange to ensure that the future conservators will know that those anomalies that we have seen today are actually intended. And then the identity report, the identity report is a report that Joanna Phillips has been crafting, and it basically is a collection of information over the life cycle of the work, and all the information that include email exchange, or in opinion of the artist for a specific exhibition are being collected here together with the decision making behind a specific exhibition, who were the players, who were involved into displaying the work. And from here you can also utilize this document that continue to live as the work moves in different iterations to extract information, create, for example, much more shortened documents that help, for example, display specification that can be provided to other players in the team. And I have added a reference here so you can actually read the article and also look at it properly. But not all our works that MoMA acquires are single-channel videos. We acquire multi-channel installation. We acquire also new media. Works that are being made with specific technology that maybe we're less familiar with. And this is, for example, the case for a work by Martin Sims. It's called WYDRN, which is the acronym in United States is pretty much used to say, what are you doing right now? And it's sent maybe at night when you're like, after a long night, someone is texting you, what are you doing right now? And this is the first augmented reality app that the museum has collected. So when I first bought into the media conservation team, there were many questions arising about what does it mean to collect augmented reality app, how they've been classified so far. Are we acquiring a native app? Is it a hybrid app? Is it a combination of the two? What is the object of preservation? Is it the phone? Is it the experience? Is it the source code? Is it the executable? What are the important behavior of this work that we need to think about? And so I dedicated 1 year of research to look at this work specifically. And so basically in 2017, this work was exhibit. You could download it on the App Store. And then there were a little bit of instruction provided on the wall, like downloaded, and point at different posters so that you can have an augmented reality so-called event being triggered on your phone that is activated through your camera. So the camera and the code has a facial recognition mechanism that allows the camera to oversee certain patterns, and this pattern recognition creates a event on your phone, and events were programmed as GIFs, as text messages, as images, as audio files, all of these. And so you could basically walk in the exhibition space with your lovely phone. We know everyone is using phone nowadays, and actually this was one of the reasons why Martine Sims has utilized an augmented reality app, because she considered phones as being so omnipresent in today's lives. Even when you go to a cultural institution, everyone is looking at their phones. So she wanted to play with that and create a bridge, or so-called connection, between the different elements, and specifically those 12 archival prints, the videos that you see in the middle of this picture, and then the rest of the exhibition, so that there could be a communication between all these elements. And you could actually discover more stories behind each archival prints. So I partnered with the LACMA Museum, the Los Angeles County Museum of Art. This is not new in the conservation of contemporary field or traditional conservation. We do collaborate. And sometimes collaboration entails talking with each other institution that perhaps have had a similar challenge in acquiring apps. And although significant properties of apps varies depending on the artist and how they have created this work, for example, this is for me more of a sculpture, and this was acquired both the phone and the phone as the pillar. Sorry, my English right now is a little all over the places. But and then we acquired not the phone, we acquired the source code and executable files. So there are differences in the way institutions acquire works, but we team up to talk about what does it mean to acquire apps. And it was interesting because my colleague Joy Einen and Morgan Kessler, with whom I had this ongoing, and I'm still having ongoing conversation about this work, acquired this app much earlier than MoMA. So they were already in a stage of actually treating the app, because there were lots of programming language problems, shift version that was updated, and the code could not be read anymore. It was not playable. And so they had done a huge amount of work to treat the work, and we presented the outcome of this research at AIC, at the American Institute of Conservation annual meeting last year. And there's resources online, so if you're interested, you can look it up. But I just wanted to bring you behind the scene and show you which type of questions we've been asked to the artist. So first of all, we wanted to understand which development environment was used to create this app, which programming language was employed, if there is a version control system being employed, if there are third-party technology being used, if there are minimum requirements needed to run the app, and if we are able to collect the source code. Yes. So this is the first stage. So the first stage was an email exchange, and then I had the opportunity to actually talk with Brent Freeney, because Martine Sims collaborated with a software developer and a design firm to develop this app. And I wanted to interview them because I wanted to understand the making of the collaboration, but also the semantics of using the specific medium for creating this app, and which tools were employed, which significant features are considered important, agreeing on deliverables. And this also followed an interview with Martin Sims over Skype that was mainly collecting more information from her side about using this app, what it meant for her, and basically we were building what we call a thick documentation for this work, like really adding layers of understanding how the work was made, which particular triggering or motivation were behind the use of a phone, and all of that became the documentation of this work. And after that, the lovely content investigation phase started. So to keep it short, because so the augmented reality app was built with a proprietary software that is called Wikitude. Wikitude is basically a software that provides lines of compiled code on top of which you can add your own piece of codes and create events. And this is a line of code on one side where you can see WYD01, and then you see a folder, this little screenshot here, with the actual assets that are being employed for the app. And then here, this is a video recording of the actual, Okay, maybe we can solve that later. I can show it later.
Yes.
Yeah. And so basically what I was doing in terms, I'm gonna just describe what I did. I was using my phone, screen record the behavior of the app when pointed a specific picture to try to understand which mechanism was triggering the event and the distance as well. And then I was trying to verify the content of what I was seeing with what was written in the code. And I did that for 13 different archival prints. I printed them out, I downloaded the app, and I utilized my phone to look at each single event, to record the behavior, and then compare the behavior with the code and the assets folder. This is not an analysis of code, this is a content verification. I think in order to ensure that this work can be shown in the future, there will be a lot of thinking process and additional research to be made. Perhaps also, I hope also like code analysis, for example, to understand how this work can be treated. And then all this information were recorded in an assessment template for iOS-based application. And this is a template that was drafted by Dina Engel and Glenn Wharton in their research about documentation of software-based works. Is a appendix. I added the link to it here, so you can also look at it. And basically you can add specific fields about the operation, technical requirements, and I've added also an appendix where I basically write down the correspondence between each physical artwork and the corresponding augmented reality event, because that was not clear when we acquired the work, like which event is being triggered by what image. So now we have like a body of documentation that we help, hopefully, my colleagues to make decision when the work is going to be shown. And now we jump to the Brooklyn Museum. So Brooklyn Museum, I started really recently. I wasn't sure I had already enough material to present, but I'll try. The Brooklyn Museum is an institution that has been starting acquiring media works in 1989. So, and they have a relatively small collection. Until now, the caretakers of the media collection have been a shared responsibility between the team of audiovisual, particularly Robert Nardi, who is the manager of AV technology and time-based media, as well as culture conservators. And when I started, I was the first fellow in media conservation. And I love a sentence that one conservator told me. She told me, like, I'm so happy you're here because you're going to put the media collection under control. Well, we'll see. So I've been doing a survey of the collection, understanding high risk, medium risk, lower risk. I'm not going to get into that. I'm going to talk about acquisition. So acquisition at the Brooklyn Museum doesn't have a time. Like it can happen much more quicker somehow. And it entails acquisition meeting, as also in other institutions, the deliverables, and then an artist questionnaire that is being sent. This is similar in any other any other artworks that is entering the collection, viewing the work with the curatorial team, and then documenting it. However, as we've seen before, I'm there also, besides putting the collection under control, which is quite challenging, but I'm also there to facilitate and help creating more standardized policy and procedures. And that also entails introducing, for example, condition assessment. And condition assessment can be done on a specific infrastructure. So you need a very powerful computer, you need the right blockers, you need specific software, but also cataloging digital components, because until now, every component that is being cataloged is only, for example, an hard drive, so physical components. But when we start talking about digital components, we need to track them. We need to understand and document what they are. If it's a master file, or if it's an exhibition file, if it's a file made by the audiovisual department, so it's not provided by the artist, and provide the demarcation line between artist provided and AV made files. And then talking about digital storage. What is in the digital storage? How is the infrastructure being made? Where are the works being backed up? Is there an LTO tape machine that helps, saving where are all the works saved, basically? What infrastructure is there? And then if there are videotapes in the collection, have they been migrated? By whom? Who was responsible for it? Is there documentation being produced? So all these lovely questions that we are together working towards finding answer to. This is just a screenshot of redrafting acquisition procedure to documents that are much longer and then much more, divided in specific responsibility that each one is going to take. For example, the registrar has to be the point person when works enter the collection. And sometimes this is not, we give it for granted, but it's not so much so. So there are all these responsibility and players that we are collaborating all together, having media conservation meetings on a monthly basis to discuss all these procedures. And then, for example, acquisition questionnaire were not based on the medium. They were much more generic. So I've been also drafting different acquisition for each medium to try to collect as much information as possible. And I'm going to briefly talk about this acquisition. Do I have time? Okay. The Brooklyn Museum acquired this 3-channel video work, or also called triptych, because it recalls the history of triptychs in religious altars. That's how Bill Viola likes to define this work. And so it entered the collection almost the week after I arrived at the Brooklyn Museum. And this work includes dedicated equipment. So the artist has provided LCD screens. And then something that, I'm sorry, but probably most of you know about it as media art enthusiasts, but when I saw this Dave Jones synchronizer, I was almost crying. And because Dave Jones was an artist that was helping Gary Hill, Bill Viola to synchronize DVD players back in 2000 when artists were trying to achieve a synchronization of multi-channel installation with a technology that at that moment in time was allowing for DVD playback. And so there was this artist himself, also an artist, but very, very, with lots of hard skills, looking at like creating synchronizers. So we acquired these, and then tapes, and then DVDs. And one thing that I mentioned, so I can't share much about this work. I just wanted to say that we are not alone in the field, okay? We have experts, and experts that help us in making, for example, in digitizing tapes, especially in a museum where we do not have racks to digitize obsolete tapes. And so I'm pairing this work and this research, because it's going to be a long research project, to migrate the work to a contemporary technology to really understand how each component of hardware, the DVD players, but there is also a signal scanner that upscale the signal. The LCD screen are also LCD screen from 2000. They were LCD computer monitors that the artist demounted from their original hardware and created costume-made black frames for them. And they have a specific features, specific diagonal that is able to retain a 4:3 aspect ratio of the video file. So those are really significant qualities, or as we call them in the conservation field, work-defining properties of the work. And I'm gonna work to, first of all, catalog all these lovely components in collaboration with Registrar, but most importantly, work with Maurice Schechter, who is a video engineer, time-based media specialist. He has worked for many years with Joanna Phillips and is one of the most generous knowledge person that can help us not only in understanding how each components work, but also making decision about how together we can migrate this work and then show it hopefully soon, so you can come to the Brooklyn Museum and see it installed. And thank you for your attention. Those are my contact information. There is an underscore here. I'm still on both email address, but you can pick your favorite. And the references here of the articles I mentioned. And last but not least, all the people that have been really helping in this project, and the Andrew Mellon Foundation for supporting me. Thank you.
Yeah, this is lovely.